Welcome to part 3 of our discussion with Gordon Reid. We'll be looking at the voice to Parliament. We're going to change angle a little bit here and talk about the voice to Parliament.
Yep.
I feel it's a very strong topic at the moment, and with the introduction of the legislation recently, it's really started to drive home that we're going to have this discussion and debate.
Yep.
What's your opinion on the voice to Parliament, and what's your view of what it'll be?
Yeah, of course. So you're absolutely right. There was a piece of legislation that was introduced to the Parliament in the last sitting week by the Attorney-General, Mark Dreyfus, and it was the Constitutional Alteration Bill. And what that is basically is the wording of what will be on the ballot paper when people vote towards the end of this year. And it's about two things. It's about acknowledgement and it's about consultation. So it's about acknowledging Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the first peoples of Australia. They are the longest, and we are the longest continuing culture on earth. Over 65,000 years of connection to country, connection to culture, and connection to people.
It's something all Australians need to be proud of.
Absolutely.
65,000 years.
Absolutely. It's something we should all be proud of. That is a unifying statement, that is a unifying belief in itself. Because it's acknowledging history and it's acknowledging who we are. And then the second part of the question, which is combined, is the establishment of an Aboriginal and a Torres Strait Islander voice to Parliament. And what that includes is an independent body being able to make representations to government on the issues that will affect Indigenous people. So basically what that means is a body that is independent to government, made up of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. They will be able to have a say on the issues that will affect them. Yeah. So it doesn't matter what that issue is. If it affects Aboriginal people, they can provide the advice to government. It won't have a veto power. It's not a third chamber. It doesn't have a service delivery model like some of the commentators have said. It's an independent body, and I think there's a few things in that which I just want to get across. If that's okay. On indulgence. One of the things is we have one of the highest numbers of elected First Nations MPs and senators that we've ever had in the history of the country. Yeah. And that's fantastic. And that's not just on our side of politics, that's right across the political spectrum. Greens, Independents, Labor, all of it, Nationals as well. That's really, really important that we have that representation. But I may not be here forever, okay? The senators may not be here forever. In this recent election, we had those people elected, we had us elected. In the next one, we may not. Yeah. What constitutionally enshrining a voice will do is making sure that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice to Parliament is always there and is always there into the future. Yeah. That's really important. And a lot of people also talk about bureaucracy, and will it be another layer of bureaucracy in our government? And the answer to that question is a resounding no, it won't. And the reason that it won't be is that a government department is there to prosecute the policies of the government of the day, Liberal, Labor, whatever. It's their job to get that policy across the line and to provide fearless and frank advice to the government of the day to get what the people voted for across the line. Okay. Whereas the voice is different in that it's made up of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and regardless of what the government policy is, and regardless of who is in government, they will then be providing advice onto how that policy that is going to be put before the Parliament is going to affect Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And that is the most important thing. It's not about trying to get that policy across the line. It's not about adapting that policy to make it work. It's about an independent voice saying, these bits are good, these bits are bad, here's the advice.
And then it goes into Parliament, passes, and then it goes to the bureaucracy.
Yeah, and I should say as well, the voice doesn't have a veto power. So they can't just say, can't do that, sorry. That's not how it works. It's providing advice to government. Then it's up to government to listen, which is important.
Yeah. So with that discussion going on, here on the Central Coast, we've been without a council for quite some time. Yeah. But in 2024, it's going to be reinstated.
Yes.
Is it something that while we're doing that restructure, we potentially should be looking at is how do we integrate the local people's culture be that place names, etc., but also a voice into council to try and help with Dakajang country.
Yeah, sure. So I think so. There's a few things in that. So you're right. We won't have an elected council until next year, in September next year, I believe. So there is some time between now and then. I know that a lot of the correspondence I receive from constituents primarily centres around local government. People come to me as their elected representative. I'll never turn them away if it's a local or a state issue. Doesn't matter if it's local, state or federal, I've become a one-stop shop in that regard. And I'm more than happy to listen to the concerns of constituents, no matter what it is. But, it will be important in the coming years to have that elected council back and to make sure that, that's restored. That's important. And we've been very supportive of states and local governments of implementing an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice or representation or whatever that might be within local and state government structures. We saw in South Australia just recently a legislated voice that was completed there, and I'd encourage your listeners and your viewers to definitely have a look at that and to see that an Aboriginal and a Torres Strait Islander voice is so important to Parliament, and it means a lot to the Aboriginal community that we can have a say in those decisions.
Your two professions are two professions very few people ever get involved with, that they briefly pass through your environment.
Yep.
So what's a normal day for a GP versus an MP?
Right. So I'll quickly go on record and say I'm not a GP. I'm an emergency department doctor. GPs, they're very different clinical environments. So I think we'll start off with how they're similar. They're obviously different for the major reasons that, one's a governance role, one's a clinical role. One is looking at a patient and the patient's history, doing a physical exam, undertaking those investigations, blood tests and scans, identifying that problem and then trying to fix that problem, and then either sending them home or admitting them to hospital or sending them to another centre for further care. Politics and being a parliamentarian isn't that different to that process. A constituent will come to me with a local, state or federal issue, doesn't matter what it is. They'll come to me with that issue, and there is the expectation that I will then either fix that issue on the spot, or then I can find or triage where that issue needs to go to try and get the best outcome for that constituent. So it's all about identifying the problem, finding a solution to that problem, and then finding an outcome that we're able to achieve for the person, the patient or the constituent. So they're quite similar in that regard. I suppose there's a little bit less blood and guts in Parliament. It does get a bit heated from time to time in the chamber, but overall they are very different, but they're also very similar in that you've got an issue and you've got to find an outcome or a solution to that issue. And if I can just quickly take a moment to thank the people that I still practice with, the nurses and the doctors, allied health and the ancillary staff for all the hard work they do here on the coast. Yeah. They do so much good for our community and they work tirelessly. They are working day and night to make sure people can go home to their loved ones. And I'll thank them every day for the work that they do.
Excellent, thank you. So that's the end of part 3 with our interview with Gordon Reid, and we focused on the voice to Parliament. The next part will be the questions from the public, from yourselves to Gordon.